My name is Nicole Vagel, and I work in the Office of Human Resources to support employee well-being on campus. And I would just like to welcome you all to our live sessions this week for Community Well-Being Month. So in the replacement of the Wellness Symposium that we typically have during this time of year, during all things COVID, we had to pivot a little bit, but still wanted to meet the need of our campus and of our community. So we kind of rebranded and then extended our offerings as well. So we have the Community Wellbeing Month, really looking at not only our self-care, but also recognizing the care that needs to happen and the healing that needs to happen within our community. So we curated a month-long worth of content and programming for you all. So we hope that you've been able to take advantage of some of the pre-recorded talks and resources, some of the reflections and small activities that we've offered on the interactive calendar throughout this month. I would just like to extend a really big and heartfelt thank you to our OHR conferences team. They're all supporting us on the back end and have really made these virtual sessions and the whole month happen. So thank you to them. And then also a big thank you to our Department of Family Medicine and Community Health partners, as well as our engagement, inclusion, and diversity partners within the Office of Human Resources for helping us bring together all of the content and the speakers that you are able to see this week and this month. So today's session will be recorded. I'm sure you all saw a little notification pop up on your screen, and this is so that we can have this offering for others who were not able to join at this time. During today's session, I would like to invite Kristi and Morgan to guide us through food and feelings. So they're going to talk about that during their session today. And Kristi and Morgan are from StayWell, and we're very happy to have them as partners in this session today. We ask that you please hold your questions until the end. And for those that joined after my little announcement in the beginning, if you would like to grab a piece of food, that will be used for an activity during the session today. So Kristi and Morgan, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Nicole. And again, thank you everybody for putting this together. It's we're all doing some different stuff this year. So it's exciting that we continue to still offer this. So we're, and Morgan and I are excited to be here. So my name is Kristi Mulcahey, and I am one of the Well Wisconsin program managers that works at StayWell. And then my coworker here, Morgan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Morgan Meinen, and I work alongside Kristi as part of the Well Wisconsin program. We're program managers for StayWell, and we're really excited to be here today to talk to you about food and feelings. So Nicole kicked it off really nice for us, but we just felt like this was a really appropriate topic for this year. We want to be exploring how COVID has impacted our relationship with food. We want to talk to you about some of the early research studies that are coming out of, how we've been looking at the past 6 months and how they've changed. We want to talk to you about why we stress eat, how we can overcome that. And we're also going to be touching a little bit on food and immunity, because we felt like that intersected really well with the conversation today. And we feel like there's lots of discussion going on about how, we can be in control of certain things and be working on our immunity during this time. So first we wanted to kick it off here with this kind of funny picture. This was something that Kristi and I actually received in an email from work. And I just thought it was funny. And immediately when I read it, I thought, you know what, this intersects perfectly with the conversation that we're talking about and preparing for this presentation. And so I'm just going to really quickly read this to you guys so you can kind of see what it says. So it says, I made myself an omelet this morning. I seasoned the eggs with some sugar, oil, and chocolate, then added a little flour for texture. Mornings don't have to be bad. So this was the first time I've seen this particular picture, and I just thought it was really funny, obviously, but then I was immediately drawn to the fact that it says, mornings don't have to be bad. So we're making that reference right away that if you have a brownie for breakfast, then automatically your day is going to go well and things are going to turn around. And I feel like there's just so many cultural references to food in that regards. You guys can probably think off the top of your head of maybe a TV show, a movie, a book that you've read that has some kind of reference to, the main character being in kind of just a really bad place. Maybe they went through a bad breakup or something, and they go to the freezer and they grab a tub of ice cream and they just start eating it to make themselves feel better. So we're going to talk in this presentation a little bit today on why we do that, and then a little bit about how to overcome it.
We can all relate to that, I think.
Yeah.
Just to start off here, a couple quick statistics, just to see where we're at. And there was a study that actually concluded that the poor eating habits has cost the United States about $50 billion in healthcare costs, which is about $300 per person. So that's accounted for about 18% of the heart disease, stroke, and type 2 diabetes. So these are those underlying risk factors that put Americans at high risk, in that high risk category for when it comes to COVID as well. So as you can see, it's something that we've had this as an issue, and now of course it's being magnified with the pandemic that's happening.
Absolutely.
And we can all relate to eating those fries as they fly by us on the screen.
Yes, and we apologize for these images during the lunch hour. I know it seems really cool.
Yeah.
So now we're going to talk about gaining the COVID-19 in pounds. And I don't know if you guys have heard this. I know it's made, some headlines in the media, and you've probably heard references to it because, again, we're starting to research how the past 6 months have affected all of us as human beings, and being put in this situation where it's unprecedented in our lifetime that we've seen anything like this and been bound to our homes. And so what's the result of that is we have the quarantine diet, which is more sugar, more carbs, more alcohol. Kristi did some research for us, and she's going to talk a little bit about some WebMD studies that we dove into for this.
Yeah, so it looks, we did have a poll that was conducted by WebMD, and it showed that, as you can see, 47% of women and 22% of men had actually gained some weight during these COVID restrictions. 21% actually said that they gained over 10 pounds. So it's not just a few pounds here and there. There's actually significant weight that's being put on. 70% of in the U.S. and 35% are internationally cited that it was due to stress eating, which was the cause of their weight gain. So this, I think this study was back in, May or towards the end of May. So, it definitely was when the onset of all of this happened. And I think that was initially when everybody, certainly had that stress eating. And, now we're coming into October. I think people are starting to see it now as a new normal. So I think it's a time that people are starting to reflect and see that, well, this is how we're probably living our life here for a little while. So I think now we're starting to see people wanting to make some of those lifestyle changes and, knowing that they need to at this point, because this is really how we're starting to live our life. And just our new normal now.
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of us can even resonate with these images here, right? Where you're stuck at home and you're bored, right? And you just have, maybe beer and pizza, or, sitting in front of your computer and kind of mindlessly eating. All of these things kind of go hand in hand.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's what we want to talk about is, do any of these resonate with you? I think stress is obviously the biggest thing that we're going to be talking about today, because this is a very stressful time, and we have to acknowledge that. So, is that part of the emotional eating connection for you? Do you find yourself when you have a deadline for work, or maybe you've been working remotely and also trying to virtually teach your children, which is the situation that I've been in personally, where, it's really stressful. And so sometimes, maybe I'm grabbing food out of convenience and I'm trying to eat it really quickly just because it's like this task that I need to check off, check my box. So, really trying to pay attention to what these triggers are for you, and understanding that, a lot of them, do come from the situation that we're in. We're stressed out and we have more time at home. You might have felt trapped at home there for a little bit. We had, like some stay-at-home orders. Again, children remote learning. Kristi and I obviously have been working from home exclusively since March. So, it's different for all of us.
Yeah, and I think, just more time at home, it makes everything is a lot more accessible for us. And, it's all you have to do is, walk a few steps and the kitchen's right there and the refrigerator's right there. So it becomes a lot harder to stay away from that stuff as opposed to when we were in offices and it was probably a little bit more difficult to get to, or you took your amount that you would have for the day. So I think that's part of it. We have more screen time right now. A lot of those activities that kept us busy in the evenings, we don't have anymore. So there's a lot more screen time and we're watching TV and we tend to, we hear a lot about what are you going to binge on Netflix. So, when we're binging, what do we want to do? We grab stuff, we sit there, we just eat and we don't think about it. So, that's adding to it. We're just, again, being somewhat bored, but yet anxious all at the same time. And that's just wanting, we're just wanting that comfort of food. And that's, again, adding to that weight gain and just again mindlessly eating, and we're going to talk about that as we move on here a little bit. And another thing is we're just I can relate a little bit to drinking more as far as just grabbing that glass of wine, or I had adult children in my home for the beginning of COVID. And, it was easier to just have a glass of wine with dinner or after dinner. So, you just had to start thinking, no, this is how we're living. This is our normal now. So as you can, and Morgan, if you want to just talk about those statistics.
Yeah, the research studies, again, we're starting to pull some actual statistics off of what that time looked like for us. And, kind of interesting that alcohol consumption has increased 14% since the start of COVID compared to the same exact time last year. And heavy drinking for women is up 41% according to the same study. So, similar to kind of what Kristi was saying, like you might have found yourself at home more, you're not going out. And so is it just easier to maybe grab, those glasses of wine, or trying to pay attention to maybe if that's something that you turn to when you're in those times of stress. So
yeah,
just interesting statistics.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that on social media, we saw a lot of a lot of baking and, drinks being made and different things like that, which, again, it's great that people are cooking more at home and baking more at home. Like that's actually a good thing, I think. But what's happening is we got to make sure that we're making those healthy choices of cooking and baking. And I think that initially we just saw a lot of, different things and doing a lot of it. So we want to just make sure that we kind of step it back a little bit. Definitely cooking more at home is great. It's just trying to put in the healthy choices for that.
Absolutely. So now Kristi's going to talk a little bit more about, why our feelings dictate how we eat. And I think this will intersect perfectly into what we're going to get into a little bit later on mindful eating.
Yeah. So, we have that, why are we making these choices? And I just wanted to just highlight a little bit, about our physiological part of that. And we have the fight or flight response, which is we've all heard about, and it protects us from dangerous situations. It's been in place for a long time with humans, and it was more, when initial threats were happening, we used to have to run away from, animals and things like that. We don't quite have those type of threats anymore of being attacked, but our body can still respond that way. And what's happening is, and this has been actually something, in our society that's been happening for a while, it's just getting magnified now through being at home, pandemic stress and things like that. But we've had this chronic stress now. So, our bodies are in the constant fight or flight mode. And what happens when we're in that mode, we have increased cortisol, and that cortisol pushes out to our sugar out to our muscles so that our muscles have energy right away, and narrows our arteries so that our blood is pumping faster. And our bodies should return to normal after that threat is finished. But what happens is we are in that constant fight or flight due to stress. And so our cortisol levels are staying increased. And so why do we eat when we're stressed? Why do we turn to that? Well, normally when we have fight or flight, we tend to not eat when we're nervous, like, before this presentation, I didn't want to eat. But what happens is when we're in that chronic state of stress, that really just that part of us just shuts down and doesn't work. So it's really just not functioning properly, and we tend to reach for things that give us that the sugar that sends us the dopamine, which is that feel good chemical. And so we get on this real roller coaster of feeling good with the dopamine, but then we drop, and then we reach for the sugar again, and then we drop. So, that's that chronic stress can do that to us, and we just don't make our healthy choices. Another thing that we need to remember about all of this too is, as we're reaching for those foods and those sugars, they are just as addicting as an alcohol or a drug. And I actually have read studies where sugar is almost 10 times more addicting than cocaine, which is just a scary statistic. But I think that we need to remember that as we try to make these lifestyle changes, because it's not just us mentally overcoming this, it's also physiologically that we have to try to overcome this. And so, just keep that in mind as we move forward to try to make our healthier choices. And it is our bodies kind of saying, oh, we want this, we want this. So, we do have some things to overcome to make those healthy choices.
Absolutely. And I think that really helps to kind of put it in perspective, that physiological response, because the hard part about this is that to your point, it works, right? Is that your body is craving this certain response, this feel good chemical, and you're eating something and you're getting that, only it's temporarily, and it's not,
Right.
What's best for you in the long run. And, we'll get into emotional eating versus physical hunger a little bit later, but, they all really tie together. So I think that's
Absolutely.
really
Absolutely.
interesting. So, like I mentioned, emotional eating versus physical hunger. We felt like this, was kind of a really important thing to cover. And I think about this. One of the things that really helps me when I think about emotional eating versus physical eating is to think about my kids, because I have two really young boys, and they will definitely play and do all kinds of things, not even thinking about food until they get those physical hunger signs, right? And then it's, Mom, I'm hungry. Mom, my belly is telling me I'm hungry, right? But they're only eating to satisfy that hunger, and then they're backing off, doing what they want to do. Food does not have this emotional attachment to them at that young of an age. And I think at some point as we're growing into adulthood, we kind of lose those physical hunger cues for one reason or another. And I think one of the important things to keep in mind on your emotional eating journey is to try to get back in touch with those physical hunger cues, whatever can help you do that. So emotional eating, what does that look like, right? It's going to come on suddenly. So all of a sudden, maybe your emotions change, and then this emotional hunger is going to come on really suddenly. You're going to crave certain foods. So like Kristi just mentioned, you're going to crave those sugary, high carbohydrates, the piece of chocolate cake or the French fry video, right? Those are the types of things that you're going to start to crave during this emotional hunger. You're going to end up binge eating, so eating more than you really should during a portion and a sitting, and not feeling that same sense of fullness that you would if you were eating just for physical hunger. So, an example would be that, maybe if you're really, stressed during something, whether it's a deadline for work or trying to complete something, or, trying to get done for a deadline, something like that, you can find where you can eat an entire bag of something, right? And still possibly keep going. Different type of hunger than physical hunger. And the other terrible thing is that you're going to feel some guilt or shame, which is obviously not what we want. We don't want that relationship with our food to put us into this sense where, we feel shameful for what we've done, or we feel like we need to punish ourselves, or we feel like we can't eat now for the night, we need to start skipping meals or something like that because we made this mistake. We never want our food to make us feel like that. So I think just something, kind of good to keep in mind. We want to transition over to listening for that physical hunger, which is going to develop slowly over time. You're going to desire a variety of food groups, which is ideally, how we're eating is lots of colors. Again, back to my kids, you think about teaching them eating the rainbow. It's so true.
Mm-hmm.
You really want to eat that variety of colors. That will help you get that sensation of fullness too, right? When you're listening to these physical hunger cues, you're listening to your body, you'll get that sensation of fullness, and that's when you can realize that it's time to stop eating. And best of all, you're not going to have any negative feelings if you're listening to your physical hunger and eating for that. You're not going to have those negative feelings, those feelings of shame or guilt afterwards, or feeling like you need to punish yourself. And I feel like that's really important. One of the things over the years as I've been educating people on emotional eating versus physical hunger that I've turned to is actually a hunger eating scale. So I encourage somebody, if this resonates with you and you feel like this is something that you need to work on, is getting back in touch with your body's physical hunger cues so that you can really listen and build that trusting relationship with your body again. I think a hunger scale can be really helpful. And there's plenty that you can find online. Actually, just if you just search it in your browser, you'll find plenty of examples of these hunger eating scales. But basically what it's saying is that if you think about a scale of 1 to 10, and number 1 on that scale is like so hungry that you almost can't function, right? Like you feel like you're starving, you can't think. We never ever want to let ourselves get to that point. So ideally you're going to start eating when your body's around a 3 or a 4. So 3 is when you're maybe starting to feel a little bit of those hunger pains. 4 is when you're just starting to feel hungry. Those are the times when you really want to be focusing on eating. You don't want to let your body get to the point to where you're kind of ravenous and really needing that food. And then on the same side of the scale, moving upward towards that 10 being like Thanksgiving full, we never want to eat to that 10 point where we feel miserable, almost nauseous because we ate so much. You ideally want to be stopping eating at around a 6 or a 7, which is going to be comfortable. You've satisfied your hunger. You've given your body what it needs to, get you back to your task or whatever you need to do for the rest of your day. And you're not feeling those terrible side effects of overeating.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful. I think to really think it through as you're picking out your food and just really being aware of that. I think that's a great scale to use.
Yeah, and it exactly transitions us into mindful eating, and what mindful eating is it's developing this mind and body connection, which we know is so important, and we know mindfulness is so important. It's something that has become, more and more popular in our culture throughout times, and it's good because hopefully it's catching on and people are starting to build some mindfulness into their own healthy habits and practices. And mindful eating is really no different, right? You're setting an intention and you're paying attention and allowing yourself to eat as you please, but as long as you're aware of what you're doing and how that makes you feel. And I think that's something that, especially in our society and culture, we kind of tend to stray away from. We tend to have our meals on the go a lot. We're a very busy society. We're working long hours. We're taking our kids to sporting events or whatever needs to be done after school. There's just always a lot going on. And I feel like even if you don't have anything going on, it's very common to have your meal in front of the TV or have your meal while you're scrolling through your social media feed or catching up on the news. And all of those things are taking your attention away from what you should be doing is focusing on that eating, listening to your body, listening to those external food cues and bringing that trust relationship back, making sure that you're not being swayed by whatever's in front of you, which is changing your emotion and then changing, how you're looking at that food or how much you're actually consuming.
Yeah, I think this is really, helpful. It's more about the experience, right? And we've just taken away the experience of eating and having, maybe sitting down together and talking and not having the TV on and things like that. And I think it's, gets back to just being very mindful of the experience of sitting down to a meal together with family and, hopefully friends as we get back out into the world at some point. But again, that's really, really important to really pay attention to that. Now we're going to just jump into an exercise, and we're going to walk you through this. This is where you're going to use your piece of food. Right now, as you see, we have a couple pictures up here. I know one of them that is somebody with wine. We just talked about drinking. No, we're not telling you to go out and grab a bunch of wine right now. But what we did want to compare it to is if you know anybody that's a wine connoisseur, you see them. This is what the type of exercise we want to go through, and it is about mindful eating. So, they really pay attention to just the whole experience, right? It's about the bottle, it's about the glass, it's pouring the wine, it's even the way it's poured. It's, they put the wine in the glass and it's swirled, they smell the aroma. They really spend time with that, just taking a couple sips of wine, and it's a whole experience. This is what we're trying to, that we're going to walk you through here in a second, and just really think about that as you're doing, just as we're doing this exercise, and as you move along, past this, as you're eating, just how mindful that is, and that's how you want to mimic what you do when you eat.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a really great comparison. So hopefully you all have had a chance to grab a small piece of food. If you haven't, again, you can just kind of listen in and think about this exercise, and maybe try it on your own sometime. You'll get the idea of it as we go through. It'll just be really quickly, but if you just want to go ahead and get ready and get that piece of food in front of you, I'm going to kind of walk you through step by step on, basically you're going to be taking a really small bite, and I'm going to be kind of walking you through each stage really slowly. So I encourage you not to get ahead of yourself and chomp at the food, because you'll kind of be missing out on a lot of steps. This is intentionally supposed to be a really slow, mindful, bite-taking experience with a really small piece of food. So first, I want you to take the piece of food that you have and hold it in the palm of your hand, or between your finger and your thumb. Now I want you to take time to really focus on it, to gaze at the piece of food with care, full attention. Imagine that you've just dropped in from Mars and you've never seen an object like this before in your life. Let your eyes explore every part of it, examining the highlights where the light shines on it. Maybe there's folds and ridges. Maybe there's any asymmetries, unique features to the food that you selected. Just really take a minute to look at it. Now I want you to turn the piece of food over between your fingers, and we're going to explore its texture. Maybe do this with your eyes closed if that helps enhance your sense of touch. And now we're going to focus on smelling. So I want you to hold the piece of food beneath your nose, and with each inhalation, take in any smell, aroma, or fragrance that may arise. As you do this, I want you to notice if there's anything interesting that might be happening in your mouth or your stomach. Again, acknowledging this is the lunch hour. Now slowly, I want you to bring the piece of food to your lips, noticing how your hand and arm already know exactly how and where to position it. Gently place the piece of food in your mouth without chewing, and notice how it gets into your mouth in the first place. Spend a few moments focusing on the sensations of having it in your mouth and exploring it with your tongue. Now when you're ready, prepare to chew your piece of food, noticing how and where it needs to be for chewing. And then very consciously take 1 or 2 small bites into it and notice what happens in the aftermath, experiencing any waves of taste that emanate from it as you continue chewing. And without swallowing yet, notice the bare sensations of taste and texture in your mouth and how they may change over time, moment by moment. Also pay attention to any changes in the object itself. When you feel ready to swallow the piece of food, see if you can first detect the intention to swallow as it comes up, so that even this is experienced consciously before you actually swallow your piece of food. And finally, I just want to see if you can feel what it's like to feel the food moving down into your stomach, and to sense how your body as a whole is feeling after you've completed this exercise. So I know Kristi did that along with us. Kristi, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I had a piece of dark chocolate, which was wonderful.
Good choice.
But yeah, it's amazing. I know that if I hadn't if you just put that piece in front of me, I would have tossed it in and not even thought about it,
Sure.
So it's amazing for us to just slow down and really enjoy it. And I think that it was, I really had the sensation of, really enjoying it, really taking the time to think about that flavor. And it was, it was a joyful experience, I should say.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think whenever I do this exercise, I always am kind of reminded that a lot of times, especially when I'm eating like a favorite food or a food I don't get very much, it seems like the first bite is the best bite, right? And
Right.
because you're just like, you're surprised, like it just lit up all your taste buds. And so I think that's something else to remember is that if we can slow down and eating a little bit, less fast and mindless and, using it in multitasking, that we can even have a better experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So now we're going to talk about tips to help with mindful eating. Obviously we're not going to create that experience over and over again. That's meant to be a long, drawn out exercise, but meant to kind of awaken your senses and remind you about how many different things happen when we eat food and what a cool experience it can be as well. So just on a daily basis, there's things that are a little bit easier and more intuitive to do. One of the things that I do in my house a lot of times is picking a smaller plate. I think that helps a lot. Dinner plates sometimes tend to be really large. I more frequently eat off a salad plate in my house. I think that helps me just to visualize my portion. I think that it can be hard for us when we're served a really large plate of food to have visually really small portions on that really large plate. I think just our brain prefers to have a smaller plate, which obviously you're going to have larger servings on it. So that's one thing that I think can sometimes help with mindful eating is that, just starting off right off the bat, if you feel like, especially if you're part of that clean plate club, which if you haven't heard that term, that's something that I was raised on is in my family, I was taught to always clear my plate at the dinner table. That was something that was required of me. So whatever my parents were serving onto my plate there, that was something that I was being told I needed to finish. And we want to get away from eating all of the plate on our food because that's taking away from, again, listening to our physical body. So instead you want to focus on, when am I full? And that's when I need to stop. So rebuilding that relationship and trying to get rid of all of those habits. And so if you're somebody who was raised or, has a hard time, throwing away the food or, separating it visually into half or things like that, picking a smaller plate can help.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. And I kind of, one tidbit I've given out in one of my talks is, we don't go to restaurants too often right now, but you could look at it a couple different ways. But one, if you did go to a restaurant, one thing they say is just have the take home box brought right away, and you take half of that meal and you put it in the box right away. I think that's a great thing to think about. Now, if we're bringing it home with us right now instead of going out, same thing. Just take out half of the meal right away and put it on your plate, and then put the rest in the fridge. And now you got 2 meals out of it too. So it's kind of nice, but it's a nice way to, because if it's there, sometimes we just, again, if we're not being mindful, we start eating it all. And that's kind of, what we want to do too is just turn off any of our devices and TV because we aren't mindful of our eating when we have that stuff going on. So make sure that you turn all of that stuff off. And it kind of talking about eating from the bag as well. You don't think about it. You're not being mindful if you're just grabbing handfuls out of a bag and you're not looking at how much you're eating at all because it's just coming straight from the bag. And I know we had a house full of my kids were here during the beginning of COVID, and we had 6 adults in the house, and somebody was getting a snack all the time. And I'd walk out in the kitchen, and the bag was right there. So it was way too easy for me to just grab the bag. So I had to really like put the bag away, don't have it sitting there, or just take a portion of it and just have a small portion of it too. So
Sure. Yeah. And I think along the lines of the exercise that we just did, one of the other things I think can be helpful is if you're just putting your utensil down in between each bite. That's something else that I've used during some of my health coaching opportunities is if somebody's struggling with quickly eating or they don't have a lot of time to eat, sometimes you have limited break, times to eat. And so, you don't have the luxury of necessarily drawing everything out maybe as much as you'd like. But I think it can be really powerful even just to set a goal to like set your fork down in between each bite. So you can really kind of practice and see, was that hard for you to do? Was it hard for you to, set your fork down in between each bite and just kind of challenge yourself to see if you're somebody who, kind of flies through your meal and, just kind of consumes it quickly, or if you're somebody who's okay with, those pauses and kind of, again, taking that time for the food to digest and trying to listen to your body.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, when we get, a couple little pointers here too, when we're stressed out, when you feel that stress coming on and you want to reach for something, maybe try to have some carrots cleaned up and handy because those are, obviously a healthier choice, but also just, you have to chew carrots a lot. So
Yeah,
they're
nice and
crunchy. They
crunchy.
kind of have that, reach for a warm, chamomile tea that's a calming, herb there, or just go out and take a walk. A lot of times if you just go get that walk in, it kind of brings that stress down. You stop thinking about reaching for that food, or even that glass of water does the same thing. And it also tells your body that if you were a little bit hungry, it has it fills you up a little bit with the water instead, and so now you're refocusing on something else instead of I want to get something to eat to
Sure.
feel
Yeah.
better.
And making sure that, you truly are hungry. Sometimes we know that if we're dehydrated, our body can kind of confuse that for hunger. So to your point, making sure that you're hydrated is a great thing too.
Absolutely. Hmm. Yeah, so we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit here and talk about, we want to get into, how to eat for our immunity, basically. And kind of the same thing, I just want to give a quick rundown of what our body is responding to, that response, that inflammation response or immunity response. I think it's important to kind of understand it a little bit, and then why, we're going to go into some of the how we can eat to help boost our immunity. So first of all, when our body reacts appropriately to inflammation or something that sets it off, um, it's vital to our survival, just like most systems, and it continues. But when the system just continues to fire away, which is what we have, then we start having all kinds of chronic diseases. So first, when these invaders come into our bloodstream, like the coronavirus, our bodies will send out a variety of chemical messengers. And in response to these, our body sends out basically, its army of white blood cells, which are there to fight the disease. So you think of like a normal circumstance of just like a cut, it can bleed, it can get red, it gets inflamed, and that's what it's supposed to do. And all those white blood cells are, and the different cells are coming there to heal that, and try to fight off any foreign bodies that maybe came in with it. And that's what your body should be doing. But we have diets, we have stress, we have lack of exercise, we don't get sleep, and that's causing our systems to malfunction. And we're just sending way too many messengers out, and our bodies are just responding with constant messages and they're trying to repair that tissue, but it never really gets a chance to repair. So it's only like a partial repair. Because again, it's just being bombarded with all these foreign invaders that our body is reading into what we're putting into our bodies and our stress and things like that. So, when the signals just keep coming, our body never has time to catch up and heal. You're just really trapped in this cycle of damage and partial repair. And the repeated damage to the tissue now starts to disrupt the basic structure and function of that tissue or organ. And this is then leading to what we call those chronic diseases that we even talked about at the beginning of what, is costing the United States in general, these chronic diseases. So we need to have our bodies working optimally in order to combat foreign invaders such as the coronavirus. So we want to talk about what can we do to put our best defense out there for our bodies to be working optimally, and what do we need. We're going to really focus on the food portion of it right now. At the end, we'll just highlight some of the other things, but I think, again, we could do a whole nother presentation on sleep and exercise and things like that, but we're going to just highlight that the food part of it right now.
Yeah, all of these things for your immunity. Food, we know, is so powerful, and so I'm going to be talking a little bit here about vegetables and fruit, which are really powerful when you talk about foods for healthy immunity. So again, just focusing on that, mind-body connection and the power of food. Vegetables have, just so many antioxidants and things that just can really help your immunity. You're looking at beta carotene, vitamin E, vitamin C. Beta carotene is a powerful antioxidant that can reduce inflammation. It does boost immune function by increasing disease-fighting cells in the body. So you're looking at, sources like sweet potatoes, carrots, green leafy vegetables. Vitamin C and E are also antioxidants that help destroy free radicals, and that's going to support the body's natural immune response. So we're looking at things like red peppers, oranges, strawberries, broccoli, mangoes, lemons, and there's many more. For that vitamin E, that we're looking at things like nuts and seeds, spinach and broccoli, dark leafy greens. Obviously, these are, again, looking at eating that rainbow, but all things that are just so full of antioxidants that they really can help to build up a healthy immunity.
Yeah, and so Morgan had mentioned basically the fruits and vegetables, and just really thinking of that rainbow. You hear a lot about that. Another thing that you want to really watch is your healthy fats. So you want to choose healthy fats. And those omega-3s are the healthy fats, and the omega-6s are the not so healthy fats. So you really want to have, a ratio of 3, or the omega-3 fats about 4 to 1. So omega-3s to about 4 of those to about 1 of the omega-6s. So you want to have your diet heavy in that. That's including that extra virgin olive oil, nuts, avocado, the tuna and salmon. Those are the type of things that have those healthy omega-3 fats. And those omega-3 fats, they actually boost the number of proteins in the body that help quell inflammation, and also they reduce the level of proteins that promote inflammation. So it really, really directly correlates with inflammation of eating those healthy fats.
That's one of my favorite pictures there. I think that looks so yummy.
If everybody's, lunchtime again, we're making you hungry. And then the next thing is herbs and spices. We talk about this. Basically, most of these have a lot of natural anti-inflammatory properties, and really, there's no limit as far as what you can use. I mean, most of these you can use unlimited, and use these to season your vegetables. I mean, it's a great way to add flavor to any of your vegetables that you're trying to, maybe roast. But turmeric, curry powder, garlic, all of those, or cinnamon, rosemary, those are great. They have a lot of anti-inflammatory properties. So you want to try to get those in your diet as much as possible as well.
Yeah, and I think this is a great point because you talked about how we're really in the kitchen sometimes more, that's been like a trend that we've seen during this time, is that people are trying to cook more at home. And to your point, it's really great, but some of the things that you might have started off making, they might not align as well with your health goals. And so I think experimenting with, these herbs and spices can be a great way to kind of mix up your dishes and kind of open yourself up to new recipes and new tastes and sensations. And I think that could be really helpful for people too.
Yeah, those are great ways to get that in.
So as we kind of start wrapping up here, a big message that we really wanted to send is to give yourself self-compassion during this time. That, we know that a lot of the stuff that we talk about is also a little bit idealistic for some of the stress that we've experienced during this time. It's easy to, say that you want to make certain changes, but we know, just along with a lot of other health behaviors, that change takes time. And it's also important for you to take care of yourself and to, recognize where you're at, and if you're in the space, to make make these changes or not. We just try to bring up some of these recommendations as really just tips and just food for thought to kind of use upon there, right? But really making sure that you are taking care of yourself, during this time and providing yourself with some grace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so important that we have to remember, we're in a pandemic, which nobody has ever been through. So, again, give yourself compassion that this has been a unprecedented time and we're all going through it together. So, I think that you just have to say, okay, this has been a difficult time and okay, maybe I haven't made some of the best choices right now, but I am going to try to try to make some of those get back on track or get some of those lifestyle changes made. But, again, we have so much happening in our world right now between the pandemic. We have a lot of social unrest. We have, obviously a big election, we're a very divided country. So there are things to cause stress right now in our lives. And it's okay, and I think too that you just want to make sure that if you do make that mistake, it's okay. You made a mistake and you might have made an unhealthy choice. We don't want to beat ourselves up over that. You just want to move on and get up tomorrow and go, okay, I'm going to, make a healthy choice today. Because I think what happens is we make that unhealthy choice. We start feeling bad about ourselves. We feel bad. So then we reach for the unhealthy choice again. And we
It's like a
really,
terrible cycle.
yeah, really get into a cycle. So, again, just give yourself grace, give yourself compassion. There's other ideas here that can help with the stress because we're all under a lot of stress right now and anxiety. Hopefully you guys can practice some deep breathing, meditation, again, journaling or gratitude. Those are things that hopefully will help with your stress as well. We want to encourage you again, like there's other things, lifestyle changes. We want to make sure that you get sleep because that's really important for that repair time, and get in as much movement throughout your day as possible. I know everything's changed a little bit for everybody's exercise regimens and gyms being closed, but, just try to get in walks as much as you can and movement. I think that's really important. So,
Absolutely.
those are just some other things. Again, we could do a whole talk on
Yeah.
on each one of those, but we wanted to highlight just food and some choices that you can make. So.
Yeah, and as we wrap up here, we really have a challenge for everybody listening in is to try to think about a goal as you've listened into our presentation today and some of the things that we've talked about. No matter where you're at in your health and well-being journey, we kind of challenge you to kind of put together a SMART goal. And we created a worksheet that I know Jen is going to put in the chat, and it will also be posted on the community wellness page that's associated with your month of wellness for anybody that's interested in going. It will give you some more information on SMART goals. It'll give you a specific chart that you can use to actually write down your SMART goal if you so choose. But those who aren't familiar with SMART goal, obviously it's an acronym, so we're looking at goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. And Kristi and I actually in preparation for this presentation, we came up with our own SMART goals just to give you examples. So the goal that I've been working on is that I really wanted to add in more yoga into my life, my lifestyle. So rather than me just saying, I want to get in more yoga, I'm saying that, I picked out the website of the yoga that I want to do, and I want to do this yoga for at least 15 minutes, Monday through Friday during my work day. And I'm actually going to put that onto my work calendar. So it prompts me that when it's time for yoga, that I'm really making the time for it, like I said. So I'm trying to set myself up for success. It's measurable and time bound. It's very specific. I have a good plan in place, and that's going to help me, be able to attain that.
Yeah, and we want to just encourage you guys to take just start with one type of goal. I know, just to share mine, I as the days are getting shorter now, it's really important for me to be outside. I like to be outside. I like to get sunlight. It helps with my stress. It gives me a time to just regroup for the day. So I get working, and before I know it, it's 5 o'clock and it's getting dark. And I just have put that into my goal is just to get outside at least once a day, unless it's raining out. I am going to bundle up even when it gets cold and get outside. I have definitely told myself that, but part of that measurable part of just putting it on my calendar, making it attainable. So really putting it on my work calendar, know that I'm going to get prompted, and hopefully, not have things interrupted during that time, so I can get out there and do that. And then, again, it's important to always just come back to those SMART goals and reevaluate where you're at, and maybe add in another goal and see where you're, what direction you're headed.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, great.
So that concludes our presentation today. So we really appreciate you guys having us, and thank you for attending.
Yeah, great. And we do, I don't know if there is any questions. I mean, we have a couple minutes here at the end, but if anybody did have a question, you could throw that in the chat.
Morgan and Kristi, again, thank you so much. Yeah, and if folks have questions, please feel free to type them in the chat. We'd be happy to field those.
And it looks like that the link is there too for, doing the SMART goal if you want to do that, and our, to work on that yourself. Thank you for the comments. I see that.
Thank you.
Glad you guys could join us today. It doesn't look like we're getting too many questions, but that's fine. But we appreciate you guys taking some time today and listening in.
Yeah, thank you guys for attending. Good. I'm glad you found it helpful. And just Nicole and the team, you have our email addresses. So if something comes up after the fact, please feel free to share that with anybody. Even if somebody, ends up listening to this recording and has follow-up questions, Kristi and I are happy to offer ourselves out for anything that comes to mind.
Thank you both.